Welcome back to another episode.
Are you a creator first and a business owner second, or are you a business owner first and a creator
have all of the ideas and none of the system?
I think the biggest limiting belief is thinking that you have to do everything yourself.
As a career coach, my job is to try and help you understand what reality is.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Career Coaches Podcast. Today I have Davis, the founder of Purple Circle, and Davis and I have been connected for a couple of years. And what's very interesting is that we are both trying to help career coaches build the right businesses. And we call it differently, right? Like I think one thing, Davis, that you talk a lot about is that you like to be a business, not just for revenue, but it's like results over revenue. And I talk about career coaches businesses that are profitable, impactful, and scalable. Different words, but I think it's the same aspect of it. It's like we're both driven by the same thing. You talk about helping 1 billion people, and I talk about helping 1,000 career coaches help 1,000 people, which is like a million people, right? It's like, so I think what's interesting is that we grew up very differently, but very the same. I went into the rabbit hole, Davis, of your story, right? And the story of you growing up in Atlanta with the single mom, and a lot of that resonated with me, of like your mom thinking about solving a problem of a dollar a meal, right? And then talk about the journey for you. And I want you to tell your story, but that like the area that people were more likely to go to jail, and then you say, hey, I want to go to Yale, right? And so there's this resonance of like grit, right? And David, I think that's what makes you and what makes you such an amazing, resilient entrepreneur, career coach. And there's no surprise that you found the success. So super excited to get on this call with you and kind of deep dive into your story, your journey, your business, and also career coaching, the industry. What has changed? It's something too that you've been doing career coaching, not last year, not 2 years ago. You've been doing this since 2018, which is around the time that I also quit corporate to be a full-time career coach. And so we have very similar paths of going from career coaching to now doing business consulting. And so, man, excited for this talk. How are you?
Same here, Daniel. Super excited to have this chat too.
David, so man, tell us a little bit more about you. If somebody just hasn't heard of you or hasn't ran into your stuff yet.
Well, Dan, you covered a lot of it, which is I grew up in Atlanta, a single mom. So the area I grew up in, which is really funny, if you think about, hey, one day you're going to grow up to be a career coach. My question would have been, a coach, like a sports coach? And what is a career? And so the neighborhood I grew up in was right by the airport. And if anyone who's ever been through Atlanta, through the airport, College Park, Riverdale area knows that's not quite the area. Besides flying in and out, there's not much reason to be there. And so growing up, similar to the neighborhood I grew up in, where roughly about 1 out of 4 families, including my own, were living below the poverty line, you don't really talk about career. You don't talk about college. You just talk about surviving until the next day. And you mentioned, for example, my mom having to figure out how to survive on $1 per meal. And that was just a necessity. My mom, she immigrated from Vietnam with my grandparents. Between the 7 of my uncles, my aunts, my mom, they had $200. So there's not much to spread around. And they didn't have even a high school education in Vietnam, let alone speak English when they arrived to the US. And so it became about survival. And so we grew up living on food stamps. And if you take the money that you have for food stamps between my mom, myself, and my little brother, you really have to think about, well, how do you make the most efficient meals? And so it was always this theme of survival. But there was something inside me that said, I just don't want us to survive. I want to be able to thrive, even though I didn't have the word at the time. And the turning point happened when I was in 3rd grade. And I had a 3rd grade teacher, Susie Britton. I'll always remember her. And funny enough, she's also going to my wedding a few months later. But she thank you. We have a whole table of just all my teachers from preschool all the way up to college, various different tables, of course, to do it. But she asked us, like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And here I was growing up eating essentially just leftover rice, Spam from the Dollar Tree store, and also an egg if we had some on sale. And all I wanted to do was just not be poor. And she said, how are you going to do that? I'm like, you tell me, you're the teacher. And she said, well, you got to go to a good college. And I said, well, what's the best college? And she said, Harvard. And I said, well, I'm going to go there. And so I went home that day and I told my grandma, I'm going to Harvard. And she's like, I don't know what that is. I was like, I don't know either. It's like, your grandpa will look that up on MapQuest, back when MapQuest used to be the navigation system. And we couldn't figure out where it was. But that birthday, my grandma gave me $20 and I bought this poster of Harvard University and I hung it on my bedroom wall. And it was the first thing I saw in the morning, last thing I saw at night. It's just what I dreamt about, was this better life. And that's when it really clicked for me. And this would later on kick in when I became a career coach, which was that success leaves clues. Even if I didn't know that how to get into Harvard, I knew that there were other people who did. And so getting into Harvard and Yale, I just started, similar to actually finding some of your stories, and what you do is you find out what works for other people. And so I started just reaching out to Harvard students, Yale students, just like, hey, Daniel, how'd you get into Yale? How'd you get into Harvard? Teach me. And I just randomly emailed these people, and some of them replied back. They helped me with my essays. They helped me with my SATs. They helped me apply for scholarships. And eventually that's how I got a full ride to both Yale and Harvard, just because just studying people who were ahead of me. And when I got there, that's why my whole perspective changed. It went from a community of people living and wanting to work at McDonald's, Walmart, to all of a sudden you have these career paths. I remember being even at the first freshman dinner we were coming in, and the girl next to me, who would eventually be one of my best friends, also joining the wedding, she asked the question and went around. It's like, what does everyone want to do after Yale? I was like, I just got here. So I was curious. And some people are like, I want to be a lawyer. I was like, oh no, I know some great divorce lawyers back in my community I can connect them with. And one person was like, I want to be a banker. And I said to myself, I have a friend who dropped out of high school. They're working at Bank of America right now, making minimum wage. Why do you want to be a banker? And of course, my mind's blown, and my ignorance shows that she means investment banking. And so this whole world of careers opened up, and that was a turning point for me. It was just going to Yale, just having my eyes open from a community where people were working at McDonald's, all of a sudden having all these career choices. And I didn't really have a path. I was just more of, in college, figuring out, what do I want to do with my life? And so I would read books. But even the ones you have in your background, I can actually make out the title, even though it's blurred out. I know the spine so well at this point, and so many of them. And so, now I can see all of them. Yes, it is what I thought. You have Ellie Go Rats the Goal. I see Rich Dad Poor Dad, Lean Startup, Purple Cow over there as well, Made to Stick. Like, I would read those books, and I would literally just email the authors and say, hey, I would love to work with you. And I ended up getting a bunch of internships. So I reached out to anyone who was willing to listen, and it opened up opportunities of what I thought was possible. And at the end of it, a lot of my internships with some of the offers you had, they said, Davis, seems like to me you work really hard, no surprise, immigrant mindset, but you really need some structure, some business skills. Why don't you just go work a corporate job? And so while you were off in Pepsi, I was like, well, they're like, let's go work at management consulting. And so I asked, what's the best management consulting firm for entrepreneurs? And people kept repeatedly saying Bain & Company. And so I worked my way, same thing, just asked Bain consultants, what do I put in my resume? What do I put in my cover letter? How do I prepare for the interviews? And eventually I get in. And so I got into Bain, loved it. And eventually I got headhunted down to work at a company I was going through Y Combinator at the time. And at the time, they had this vision of basically being a career coaching platform and just being able to provide career opportunities for people at mass scale who weren't meant to go to the colleges. So our joke was that between all of the teams, we had half a degree between all of us. So half the people dropped out of high school, had dropped out of college, just right. So it was the right place for them. And at the beginning, we were just losing money left and right, but we had the founders' visions. And eventually we would turn it around. We would figure out the leads, the sales, the tech and everything. And we would go from losing hundreds of thousands of dollars per month to making $1 million weeks. And that was like the first view that I had of what it takes to grow a successful coaching platform. But during the time when the company wasn't doing so well, I had my mom called and she said, hey, Davis, I have $21,000 debt from this bill I need to pay off. And I had no way of paying it off at the time because all my money from when I was working at Bain been to basically California taxes, California cost of living, and supporting my mom. And so I had a few $1,000s in my bank, which at the time I should have had a couple $100,000 in my bank. And so I was so ashamed that I couldn't pay that. And I needed to figure out something on the weekends. And so that's how I became a career coach. Was one day I was just trying to figure out, what can I do? Can I be an Uber driver? Can I go on Upwork, be a data analytics person? Like, what can I do? And I was just scrolling online one day, and on one of my social media platforms, a girl was asking, hey, I have an application I'm applying to McKinsey. Does anyone have any advice on it? And I was like, yeah, just let's get on a call. And honestly, I should have been working, should have been trying to figure it out, but I think I just needed distraction at the time because I was just so stressed with this $21,000 bill. So I ended up taking this call. And at the end of the call, I was just giving her advice about resume, cover letters, how to interview. And at the end of it, she's like, if my parents give me the money, can I hire you as a coach? And I was like, how much would they pay you? I was curious. She's like, well, to get into college, they did pay this amount here. I was like, okay, well, it's 5,000. Well, I was like, if I do 2,000, you think they say yes? They're like, I think so, because they paid 5,000 for the current. I was like, sure, I'd love that. And then the next day, she messages me, texts me, she's like, do you take Venmo? I was like, yeah, sure. And that was my first client. And we worked on her resume, cover letter, interview skills, and she referred other people. And that was the start of my weekend career coaching business. That's a long-winded way of saying basically I fell into it by just following people who are ahead of me, just taking advice from people, and then eventually just having to pay this medical bill I had no way to paying, and just on the weekends, just building that weekend business.
David, I see the pattern that you follow, and it's like I come across a goal, and it could be when you're young, saying, "Hey, I want to go to Harvard, so I have this poster," or "Hey, I want to break into consulting," or I want to build a business." In a sense, it's like you find a goal, you're naive enough to reach out to people who've done it, and then you learn from people who've done it, right? And even and it's like a superpower per se, because I think it's common sense, but it's not common practice, right? Like if you were to reach out, like how many people were reaching out to the authors of the books that we've read? I didn't, right? Many people don't. Where does that come from?
Good question. Where I feel as though this comes from is two ways. One is I realize I have nothing to lose. As in, what's the worst that someone can say to you? It's like they can say no. It's like the people who listen to your podcast, it's kind of like, what's the worst you can do when pitching a lead you're offered to work with them? The worst they can do is say no. And people think that, oh, if I do this, I do that, people will just think poorly of me. Honestly, people forget. And if you need to know about it, just think about your email. Think about how many AI tools now, but before even people would just code email you pitching some offer. You don't remember their name, even if you put them in spam. It's like the same way when I was growing up. I was like, I have nothing to lose. I have a lot to gain.
Yeah.
So let's just do it.
Davis, when I look again, I was mentioning even before we started, like for me, same thing. I think I'm super naive and super hard-headed that I would go after tasks that if I were to just ask other people around me and listen to them, they're like, don't do it. It's too hard. Don't do it. It's not like, entrepreneurship is not worth it. I just remember quitting my job at PepsiCo and telling my mom that I'm quitting. My mom crying, begging me to stay because she just thought I had such a great job and so on. Right. But then the question that I have is like, do you think building your own business or entrepreneurship, right, is something that you're just born with, or is it something that can be learned, or is it a little bit of both? Is it nurture, or both?
I would say something. There's the famous quote where some entrepreneurs are born and some have entrepreneurship thrusted upon them. I think it's a combination for many people. For me, growing up, you would think that typical Asian American, you would grow up, you should be a doctor, be an engineer, go get a high paying job and get a nice house. And I grew up, my grandma was the first entrepreneur in our family. So she didn't complete high school, obviously didn't go to college. And she was a farmer back in Vietnam and found her way into the US. And when she started, she would work any job that she could get to make sure that our family stayed afloat, whether it was working at baggage claim at the airport, whether it was taking night shifts, cleaning up buildings, whether it was cooking for her family as a nighttime cook. And she would take whatever job, but her dream was to eventually own her own company. And she did. She ended up owning a nail salon on the south side of Atlanta. And it was one of the first women-owned nail salons, especially of a minority. And it was something new in our neighborhood at the time. And so I remember she would just go in and the business wasn't profitable for a very long time. And she didn't have all the skills. She had to figure it out herself. But I always remember her growing up and telling me two things, which is one is when you're on your own boss, you get to make your own impact. You get to hire people. You get to contribute to the world. And you don't say no to everyone. No one tells you what to do. But ultimately, of course, if you fail, it's up to you. That's the first thing that she told me. It was like, you control your destiny. And that idea of controlling destiny when life happened so much to her up to that point, it was something that she didn't want us to take for granted. And my grandma also said the second thing. She's like, why do you think that your grandpa and I and your uncles work so hard? It's so that you and your cousins can have the opportunity to be whatever you want. Like if you want to be a doctor, you could be a doctor, as in we don't know what that's like, but we just want you to be better than what we have, like not to own a nail salon. And so that was the doctor was like, what are you going to do with all this freedom that your family gave you? And so I took it upon myself, and every day I would just watch my grandma growing up. I was like 5 years old till the time, and just watching her. Some days she would come home, she would be exhausted, sleep a couple hours, wake up the next day and continue working. And I thought to myself, on the deepest days, when my career coaching business had rough days, when someone embezzled from me, when a key general manager left, when all these things happened, when COVID happened in the beginning, when all these incidents happened, I always remember back to my grandma, and she's like, well, she had less than I did. She actually had a lot of fixed costs and all these things. And yet she still made it to the day. It's like, I'll be able to survive it. And so that was the motivation. Like, I knew that part of it was just, it wasn't my family. It was my grandma who did it. But the part that was thrusted upon me was the fact that I had this medical bill. And I honestly thought I was going to set up my career coaching business in the beginning and then shut it down afterwards, because it was just meant to pay off the bills. That's it. Like, I wanted to go back. I was building something amazing at the company I was at, the startup I was at, and I wanted to continue it. And it wasn't until the career coaching business, just my consulting offers just started taking off, that I was like, well, maybe I can be this entrepreneur. And so I took the leap there. So I guess that's where it comes from. It's just a sense that, one, the worst that someone could tell you is no. And two, we're in such a privileged state where worst case that ever happens, and this has happened, I'm seeing you've seen this in the market as well. Like, a lot of career coaches this year, it's been a tough year for them. And some of them have shut up shop and gotten back to corporate jobs. But here's the thing, they got jobs. So it's kind of like the worst thing that happens is you go back to corporate. Like, if you and I left everything and we lost everything, either one, someone will want to hire us, or two, we just go back to corporate jobs. Like that.
It's so interesting. Yes, I think this year has been tougher for career coaches, and I definitely want us to explore that. I want to keep talking a lot about your journey, Davis, because I think like you just have such an incredible story, but it's also, there's so many things that somebody can learn from your story that they can extract and put into their life to do better. The way I kind of have looked at your story from afar is, every stage you end up picking up things that then help you in the next stage of your life. When I look at your content, when I look at your YouTube videos, when I look at that, I see a lot of management consulting in the way you teach, right? A lot of frameworks, a lot of like breaking down very complex situations or complex business problems, and then you simplify that. Can you help us understand a little bit more about how you see that? Why do you use the frameworks why do you put things into frameworks? And what are some of the biggest frameworks that maybe highlight that are important in business that really helped you get to the next level?
Yeah. Frameworks and thinking about them. I used to was like this, is that when I was a kid, I was voted the smartest kid in my class. And I remember as soon as that announcement got made, one of the kids in my class said, Davis is not smart. He just works hard and just tries to explain things. I'm like, and the teacher's like, yeah, that's why he's smart. Right. To me, I never thought I was like smart. It was just more of, I needed to understand it for myself. And so I always myself, how do I explain it to myself if I didn't have this vocabulary I have now? How do I explain it in the most simplest way possible? Because if I could do that, I can explain a complex topic in a simple way, then I truly understand it. And so that's why I love working in frameworks, because you can break a complicated problem down into its simple parts. And so, yeah, that's like some of my favorite frameworks. I'll tell you about some that I use on a daily basis. And I think whether in your personal life or in your work life, you 100% do it. The first one is just a simple 2x2. Most people have seen it in books. It is how important something is, what's the impact of it, high impact, low impact, and how much time is it going to take you. And I always think of myself, can I knock out the ones that are high impact and also really quick to do? So I'll give you a personal example of this, which is my wife loves handwritten letters. And so she showers at night, my brain's dead. And so I'll just write her these letters and I'll hide it somewhere in our house. Not too hidden, but somewhere she can find. But it's quick, but it's high impact because it really makes her day, right? And low impact would be something that, and I would avoid the opposite, which is something that's low impact and takes a lot of time to do. So for example, if I were to cook a meal for her, I have very little cooking skills. I admit that. And it would take me forever and make a mess. I'm going to avoid that. So I show her love in different ways. And then there are things that are high impact that takes a lot longer time. So those are the things that I invest in, knowing that they're going to happen. And then there are things that are low time, low impact. On that one, we avoid it. But there are things that are high time, low impact. We want to be able to avoid those as well. So I tend to avoid those and focus on what's high impact and what I can do now versus high impact that I can do long term and build on the foundations of that personal life. In business, it's the same thing. Oftentimes, I think I see the problem that a lot of people have. It's not that the work ethic isn't there. It's just that they don't know what to prioritize their time. It's kind of like we tend to resonate to what we think is the easiest, but it's not the most high impact. I'll give you an example of this. Like, and you probably see this. There are coaches who want to get more certifications because they believe that certifications are going to do it. Problem is, high certifications aren't going to get you more clients, and it takes a lot of work. So it's high time investment, very low impact, versus you avoid the things you're not naturally good at, which is, well, it might take a long time to get good at LinkedIn, and but it's going to have a high impact for you. And yet you choose not to avoid because it's just harder. And so when I use this 2x2 matrix, I always think about what's high impact, what's low time investment. Let's do that. And what is high impact and also high time that I can do towards the future. That's one of the frameworks that I just personally love doing. Another framework I always love doing is, I call it the 16-hour rule. I often use it in business, but whenever you have a reaction, let's say that it is an employee who didn't do something, or it's a client escalation, or you get some sort of dispute, whatever it is. And I always think to myself, does this have to wait now? Or what happens if I just give it 16 hours? Basically, I don't think about it. I park it and I come back to it. Because oftentimes I find that if you react right away, you don't make the best decisions. You've often sent an email you regret, a Slack message you regret, or make a decision you can't reverse. Versus if I just let it sit, I'm like, it's not urgent. Let's just give it a day. I'm clear-minded. I've slept. I've rested. Let's go back to it. And so I always love frameworks because it simplifies patterns and it forces me every time I encounter a situation to really think, what's the best course of action here? Versus just thinking, all right, I'm just going to plow through this.
That's incredible. Davis, you've been a career coach when I go on your LinkedIn with your consulting, when you're helping people break into management consulting since 2018. Since then, we've gone through COVID. We've gone through, I think we went through a bunch of stuff. We went through first COVID, and then now we went through the changes of AI, right? Do you still think it makes sense to start a career coaching business in 2026?
It's funny. I get asked this question a lot. And so the way that I see it, and I'd love your perspective on this too, is the way I see it is that it used to be that if you were a career coach, and I would say we caught it in a really good wave, like no offense, like 2018 up to 2021 was just so prime to be a career coach, just because you were basically riding a high tide. It was basically a market where people had disposable income and they were looking for jobs, and you could just promise the whole day, hey, I'm going to get you a better job, and you get to ride it there. Of course, during COVID, you think, oh my gosh, what's happening? But then once things started opening, it became the best year for many coaches, including myself at the time. But what does that mean now? Back then, it was more like you have a tide that you're riding. But what I've noticed this year is that you almost have, it's almost similar. So we were talking about hamburgers earlier. Is imagine it's almost like a hamburger, but the meat is rotten. The buns are where you want to be. And so what I mean by that is that you're either going to be at the top 10% or the bottom 10%. Now, what I mean by this is that what I've noticed is, at least within the coaches I keep talk to and within Purple Circle, you have some coaches who are having the best year they've ever had. And they're making more this year than they've had since starting their business because they've chosen one of two positions. They've chosen the top 10%, which is, I'm going to charge a premium price. I'm going to niche down. I'm going to be a service. I'm going to leverage everything I can. And basically, you become bought on your judgment. And it's like, I don't want to go to AI for this. I want to be able to ask Daniel for his advice on this particular situation. And you position yourself as a judgment. You're in it. You're in the weeds. Then the bottom 10% is, no, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to make my service as accessible as possible by creating a platform, by creating a tool, by using AI first, by being able to get you fast responses. The people who I see are struggling is that 80% that are in the middle on it, who are they haven't decided what they want to do. So it's kind of like they're doing the same things they were doing back in 2021. That's just not working now. Or they're entering and they don't have a market position. They're just like any other coach, and they're getting cannibalized either by the AI or by the coaches who are charging a premium, who can go out and say, I have all this experience. And so if you were a coach that's starting today, I would think about what's your positioning? And of course, some things will be easier than not. So for example, if you're younger, if I was younger, for example, I was telling my wife about this, I would literally just be AI first and just figure out how can I go through. And some Purple Circle members, they're in their early 20s and they are crushing it. They're mid six figures and beyond, and they're in their early 20s and they're building it faster than I can because they're doing AI first. And it's just amazing what they're able to do, how many clients they're able to serve with a lower team count. And you and I talked about this a couple of years ago, which one of our faults is that sometimes we both overhired at certain times when we should not have. And so they're rocking it from just a high margin point of view, but also low, just easy accessible. And then the coaches at top, for example, people who left Google, left PepsiCo, and they can have that leverage. They're able to position themselves as an expert. It's just everyone else in the middle, that 80%, if they haven't chosen what side they want to be on, that's the side that, funny enough, burger example, gets fried.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting because I specifically, I usually only work with people on the top, right? Like a lot of the clients that I work with, we're always helping them position themselves in the top 10% in the example that you're giving. Maybe it's because I just don't feel the conviction of knowing how to build a lower ticket community or lower ticket item or in that scenario so usually I don't take on those people as clients. I have seen, but I have seen a lot of people in the middle get really, really hurt. And the number one people that I've seen being hurt in this industry are resume writers. So I have spoken to more resume writers in the last 3 months, in the last 3 weeks, in the last 3 years combined. And I've seen the same trend. I've spoken with some of the biggest resume writers, Davis, on LinkedIn, people who have had their resume writing business for over 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Like they were, I mean, if you think about it, but probably like 5, 10 years ago, there was way more resume writers than there were people that called themselves career coaches, right? It was a profession. Even when I remember hiring a resume writer when I graduated college, it was called Top Resume. I still think that they're around. And I paid $500 to get my resume and my LinkedIn and a cover letter built, right? And it was like, it was like a 30-minute call. They build it right? And a lot of these resume writers that would be doing $1 million in business or over $100,000 a month, organic, no ads, like coming from LinkedIn referrals or recruiters that were sending clients to them. They own the niche. Like I've spoken with resume writers who were generalists who just only works with all industries, all levels. I've also spoken with resume writers who were the cream of the best resume writers in their niche. Like they just own the whole niche. And every C-level executive within this industry, right, in Texas, without saying the name, like would go to this person. And their businesses are affected. I talked to a resume writer that used to do over $100,000 a month. Now it does less than $17,000 a month, right? Still has the same team, still has the same overhead. And I think a lot about that. It's like, what is it? Is it because the AI can write a better resume than a top tier resume writer? I don't know that it could do it right now, but it can get pretty close, right? But what I think is changing is that the way that job seekers are looking to get help with their career. I think job seekers, especially white collar workers, which is most of the people that hire a career coach anyways, are already using ChatGPT. They're already using Claude. They're already using Gemini, and they know that they can do their resume there. And so I think that the way that people shop for a career coach or for career help is very different. And that the idea of like, I need a job and the first thing I need to get a job is a resume. And then all I need is a good resume to get me interviews. And I'm usually pretty good at interviewing, so I don't need anybody else. And so that whole thing of I just need a resume writer and that's the solution to getting a job has been completely eliminated, because now you see people building their resume through AI, getting 80, 90% of the way there, right? And then still struggling to get a job. And I think to me, that's opening a door to the type of career coaching of I will work with you until you get a job, which is, to your point, a higher ticket offer, more on the high end. And I think that to me, there is room for growth there. I think that what's interesting is that as a whole, career coaching is not normalized the same way as hiring a real estate agent is to buying a house, or hiring a financial advisor to plan for retirement, or even the luxury of hiring a personal trainer to get in shape. Even if hiring a personal trainer is out of the budget for most Americans or even most people, I would say people still know what a personal trainer does. I don't know that people think about career coaches that same way, right? And I think that there is room for career coaches to be more normalized. And I think about career coaches, and I think, again, we might have a very different, not a very different, but we do have a different definition. When I think about career coaches, in my head, maybe it's because of what I know, I think of the career coach that helps someone improve their career, like go from this job to this job. And it doesn't necessarily mean get a new job. It could just be get promoted too, right? But like career management, I think that we'll get there as a career coaching industry. I just think that is not normalized yet. And I think that in a world, I think about a world where there's career coaches that own a niche. And it's the career coaches that have the data to be able to prompt the AI better and also have the network within a particular industry that are going to ultimately grow the industry. I just think we're just in a very awkward stage of the industry. And to your point, I think I think to your point, there's going to be some very low, like AI first career coaches communities that will grow. And I think that they're all, and I think right now what's affected is the middle. So I agree with you. I think that the middle is being wiped out.
The middle is being wiped out. And unfortunately, that's like 80% of the people are roughly of that. And you're right. As in resume writers were the first to go. As in you see the sign starting last year because I'm in a part of many associations of career coaches and resume writers. And that's the talk. Like when you see in the forums of people shutting down their business, going back to corporate, it is exactly that, which is the cannibalization of it. And it's weird, but it's similar to this, which is you and I both know the power of coaching. But you mentioned, for example, getting a fitness coach. But for example, someone else might think, all right, I'm just going to read a book or I'm just going to go and find something that's just good enough. And so for resume writers, when you don't know what great looks like and you can't compare someone online to what you can write, the issue is, and I find the same way, and I'll use an easier analogy of this so that people can understand and don't feel that it is too close to home, is I'm working on a book right now and I hired a book designer cover designer before Claude Design came out. And obviously we're using her, but it takes her days, if not a week, to get revisions back. Versus I load up my Claude desktop, go on design, and I say, oh, actually, can we change this font to this font? And then all of a sudden, a minute later, I get all these. It's the same thing with the resume, is that you can get instantly. You don't know what good or bad looks like. You can tell generally it's better than what you had before, but you can't tell. But with the resume writer, that part of the stack is being removed. And the people who are fighting it, it's the same thing. As in, we had a bunch of resume writers, and I told you, like, you're going to have to provide another service. As in, it can't just be resume writing. It just can't be LinkedIn brand optimization unless you have something that goes on to it. You talked about different modes. Like, for example, we have one branding coach who does LinkedIn resume, but his competitive advantage is the industry. He only focuses on one type of industry and he has connections to it. And so when you're in the program, he can actually open doors for you. And that's his moat. That's the difference between, you can't get that with GPT. You can't get that with Claude. You can't get that with Gemini, but you can get that with him. And that's like the value prop. And he makes it very clear. And that's why he's still having record months versus others who, if they didn't have that moat, are struggling. So you're right. I agree. As in, the resume writers have been the most affected on it. And unless they choose to move to one or the other, either you're doing your resumes in a fast way that they can interact with you quickly, or you're going to get decimated. The other factor, though, is just looking at the numbers of memberships prior, is just the influx of resume writers coming into the market. And it's like when you have so many resume writers, and the logical thing you do is you compare prices. For example, if I'm charging $500 and if Daniel's charging $400, he's promising the same thing. And then Marie over here is charging $300, and all of a sudden, like, wait, I just get a Claude account for $20. I'll just do that. And so it's a race to bottom.
Well, I think, to me, when I think about career coaches that are starting their business, to me, they fall under two main traps. And then maybe this is how we can kind of talk about the future of what we see career coaching. One, the first one that I feel like they're falling under is, you have usually this is kind of like the ideal customer profile, or not the ideal customer profile, like what we see usually goes in, who becomes a career coach. You have a corporate professional who has experience in a particular industry, let's say at least 5 years, usually 15, 20 years in a particular industry. And they've built relationships in a network, and they've been the go-to person within their company or their group of friends to help with resumes, interviews, and prep. So they have this sense of, I love helping people. I am the go-to friend. I am the one who helps them with their resume. I'm already doing this. I've even helped this handful of people do this and there. A lot of times, to your point, they think they need a certification, so they go get ICF or some other type of certification. They might do that while they're in corporate because it sometimes takes time. And then they're kind of ready to start the business. And the first mistake I see career coaches make is what I call like the referral trap of like expecting that the same people that would get your advice for free are now going to go and pay you for this service. And I think people come to the hard realization that that's not the case, that because they're so used to getting it for free. And if they are, they're going to get a couple of $100s here and there. They're not going to go and pay you enough money that's going to replace your 6-figure or multiple 6-figure corporate income. But then they go into the second trap that I see is, and I call it the commodity trap, that they are thinking that because they're small and they're just starting out, that they need to go and sell their services to everyone. So they're not niching down. They're not focusing on industry. They're not focusing on anything. They're just like, I'll do anything for anybody at any time. Right. And that's where they start competing on price, because they're a commodity, because the only way to win in a commodity is a price game. And so they're like, oh, this person does a resume $500. Now I got to do it for $300. And I think people get stuck there. And that's where I think the majority of career coaches never actually take off, because they can't, one, find a predictable way to generate clients that's not relying on a random referral. And two, when they do get clients, they're not getting enough revenue coming in because they're selling their services at a commodity price point. That's what I've noticed. I would love to see, like, have you seen similar trends? Do you see another kind of like pitfall that people entering the career coaching industry are making?
Yeah, I love what you call it. So we have different names for it. But the first thing the way that I think about this too is that I always think about the end goal in mind. And to me, I call it a sovereign business, which is a business that runs without you. Like you own the business doesn't own you, and it just becomes a job that you have, that you're chained to. And in order to build a sovereign business, you need three things. You need consistent leads, consistent sales, and consistent results. Because if you have leads and sales but no results, that's just burnout, and that's just a bunch of people going on Reddit complaining about you. If you can have leads and be a great coach, but if you don't have sales, you have inconsistent revenue months. And if you're an amazing salesperson, you are amazing at being a coach, operator, but you don't have enough leads, you basically are on survival mode. Every single lead that comes to you, you're trying to make a deal in terms of, hey, yeah, I can stretch out the payment plan. What if we do it on a success basis? And you're always just trying to close the deal because you're trying to stay afloat. All three of those traps obviously breaks down into smaller. So those are the big traps I see, is that you're missing one of these three pillars. But under them is these. For the first one is just the most common one, is the leads. Is the first one you call it, like being everyone. I call it being the Chinese buffet, which is you're trying to serve everyone, but you're trying to be a Michelin star restaurant. It just doesn't work that way. And so people only compare you as like, all right, was it good enough and was it cheap enough? Versus you're trying to be a premium sushi restaurant. Totally different vibes, right? And you got to, there's plenty of people who want to be the cheapest in the market, but only one person can truly be the cheapest, but everyone can choose to be a premium version of whatever it is that they're doing. After they get the offer going, it's just the next trap I see is the everywhere trap, which is you try to market on everywhere. You try to be on Instagram, X, Twitter, wherever you want to, you want to go everywhere. And as a result of that, you burn yourself out trying to be everywhere versus just focusing on one lane. Like you do it really well with LinkedIn, for example. It's just focusing on doing one thing really well and doing it over and over again. The third is, I call it the motivational driven marketing trap, which is you only do marketing when it's convenient, when you feel motivated. And all of a sudden you lose. And I see this a lot with executive coaches who have these retainer clients, and they're like, I don't need to market because I have all these clients. And then all of a sudden your clients let you go on retainer. Their clients get fired or whatever it is. And all of a sudden your revenue just got cut by half and you have no lead flow coming in. And so as a result of it, you're going to have to rebuild that pipeline. So you're already behind. And so I see that as a trap as well. And so those are the three that comes to leads, right? Is that you're a Chinese buffet. You're trying to be everywhere. And you're only doing marketing when it relies on you, motivational versus process driven. And then you go into the sales traps. These are three average sales traps. Like let's say you have leads. The three sales traps I call it is, I want to help everyone, which is you open your calendar and you talk to everyone. And I'll be honest with you, 60% of those people don't need to be on your calendar. They show up, they don't have the budget, they just want free advice. It's like, oh, can I get another call with you? You think they're going to sell? You're going to sell them? No, they just want more free advice. They're just kicking the tire down the road, or they just ghost you after a bit. They don't value your time, right? It's like you just talk to everyone. But even if you filter everyone, the next trap is you wing it. It's kind of like you go on a sales call and you don't have a script. So some calls go on for hours and others take 10 minutes. And you can never figure out why you're missing or hitting. And then after that is the capacity trap, which is you don't have enough capacity to be on the sales calls while you're fulfilling because your business model is broken. After that is the results part, right? Being an operator. So the three traps I see there are, one, all the results rely on you. If you're not involved in it, something breaks. And I see coaches all the time, they want to scale. And this is the issue we run into. They have this mindset that, Davis, I've tried hiring before it didn't work. I ended up having an escalation, chargeback, refund request, whatever it was. And I had to go back and fix this client. I don't want to charge again. So it's like all the results come from them. And even if the results don't come from them, the next trap then becomes the most important job trap, which is you have a job. Like the company doesn't work without you. And I've been in all these traps. This is why I know, because I've been in all of these. And then the final trap is not knowing what you want, as in not having optionalities. Like whether it's cash flowing to business, whether it's passing on to your kids, whether it's passing on to your team, whether it's selling it. There's no plan. You're just every day waking up, winging it, and hoping and praying. It's just, I know you have like two, but it's like those are the 9 most common traps. The only reason they're top of mind for me because I fall into all of them at some point, sometimes multiple times.
It's interesting because it's the same traps that I've fallen in. It's the same traps that I see all my clients fall in. And it's the same trap that any entrepreneur who's been in business long enough will eventually fall into them. And sometimes we can get out of those traps faster than others. Sometimes it just takes, you can do it by hiring or working with a mentor or a coach that's going to help you say, hey, you're going to avoid this trap, but you still sometimes have to learn that, even if it's only, if you get over it in weeks versus years or in months versus years. So I think that's really interesting. And I would agree. Like, I think that's what we're seeing in the market. What do you think? Like, how are you thinking about AI? Like, do you see it as, it's going to help business owners be better business owners, but then at the same time, it's going to displace a lot of people in their career? Like, how are you thinking about this in AI? And what are you telling your clients on how to prepare for this world of AI being more and more relevant?
I love AI. I invest in AI companies. I play with AI. Literally on my second monitor right here are 3 terminals going with Cloud Code and Codex each, checking my things that I'm building for fun. And so I'm a little biased on that one, but AI is just the greatest technology that we've had during our time. And there are people who just ignore it completely. They're going to get wiped out. It's the idea that, imagine going back to 1990, you have access to the internet and you refuse to use the internet. You're going to be wiped out at some point. So there's no ands or buts about that. But it doesn't have to be complicated. So what I tell people is that you can think about the 5 levels of AI. But before we talk about it, actually, let me tell you three frameworks. You talked about frameworks. There are 3 frameworks that I look at when it comes to AI. First is how to think about AI. A lot of people think about AI as a time subtractor, like they can save me time. But I want you to flip that and think about it as a time multiplier. The way to think about this is AI, you can have it copy and paste things for you, do some small task. But yeah, it saves you a couple minutes. But what can you also multiply your time? So for example, let's imagine that before you would have to manually search for clients how to find their jobs. And of course, you do co-career here, so it doesn't apply for you guys. But you guys basically multiply out how many job applications you can do, how many messages and everything else, right? Like a normal coach would do. It's similar to when the tractor was first used. Anyone who was using a plow, you can't keep up with a tractor. A tractor it's going to roll you over. I don't care if you're the strongest farmer out there, you're not going to out plow a tractor. And so if you have it and you think of it as a tractor, you're going to come out ahead. Second framework I think about is the adoption curve, which is people aren't adopting AI as much as you think they are. And so by being ahead of it, you're going to be ahead of the curve. Just because, similarly, I was looking at the stats of this, but the tractor first came out in roughly around 1920. But do you know when did you say that? When did you say that most farms started using tractors? It's like 80% plus.
1960.
No, 1970, close. 1970 heading to 1980. So imagine that. This technology exists, obviously some for capital access, but we're talking in the US already. They're talking about like 50 years from adoption of being mass market, right? Think about all the people who used the tractor early and invested in it. What happens to them? They grew a lot faster. They bought out the farms and eventually became the big farms that we know today because they adopted this technology. So going back to the tractor, I always think you don't want someone else to be using the tractor while you're still plowing. So, and the good news is a tractor is not expensive. Get a $20 account, pick your favorite and eventually upgrade, but it's just so easy, right? So that's mindset number 1 is, again, just framework, not a subtraction, multiplication. Number 2 is use a tractor, not a plow, adopt it. People are really slow to adopt. So if you're already ahead of it, you're already going to be so wowed by it. And framework number 3 is I think about it in levels. And so most people are at level 1. So level 1 to me is just similar to a chatbot. You input, it outputs. So this is like ChatGPT. You ask it, hey, what are some recommendations for when I'm in Orlando? Comes back with some recommendations. That's level 1. Level 2 is eventually you'll be able to build out a simple app. So every time you just plug in, you know that you're going to ask for a city. So if I travel and I put in a city, it will just automatically know what my diet is and recommend it to me. So I don't have to retrain it on what I want. I don't have to ask, hey, every time. So I have, for example, a weight loss app. And basically what I do is I take a picture of the menu and it already knows and is connected to my fitness app of how many proteins I still need for the day. And so it'll just tell, okay, avoid this, or don't eat at all. It'll just say that. I don't need to say anything. I just load a picture, right? Level 3 is you eventually have an agent that will just proactively tell you. It's like, oh, hey, I saw for lunch you already ate here. This is what you have. So if you haven't chosen dinner, these are the things that I recommend. So it'll just give me cuisines. And I'll tell you, when you're on a diet, it's usually just Japanese food, hot pot. And I'll tell you, as much as I want like Latin American tacos, Brazilian steakhouses, it is never on the suggestion list. That's a fun joke. I was like, it's never on this list anymore. And it'll just tell you what you want, right? So level 3 is you have this agent that works. And then eventually level 4 is you have an autonomous agent that just doesn't just do one thing, but it does multiple things. It's able to prepare your day. It's able to cancel meetings. It's able to tell me, hey, Davis, just remember you have a podcast interview with Daniel today. So you might want to wrap up early, and it'll just give me a warning on my screen. I was like, all right, cool. And eventually level 5 is you have what people call like these ecosystems of agents, right? Who are working together and getting solutions. The problem is most people think you have to be on level 5. Not everyone's even on level 1. So if you get on level 1 or level 2, you're already ahead of everyone. So I just think about it in progression. So whenever a coach or a client comes to me and they say, well, Davis, how do I think about it? It's like, well, how do you use AI now? And my goal is not to get them to level 5. My goal is just to get you one level ahead of where you are. And if it's level 0, you'd be amazed how many times someone installs ChatGPT or Claude for the first time. And I'm like, and they're wowed by it. I'm like, all right, great. Come back, play a little bit. Next week, we'll get you to level 2. Most people will end up, my goal is like you can at least operate at level 3. But if you can do that, you're good to go. Level 4, level 5. When you get there, we'll get there. But it's just, that's how I think about it. Is it's if you bury your hand in the sand and think that it's going to go back into a box, it's like pretending the internet in the 90s was going to go away. It's not.
So I think to your point, I think AI is going to obviously change a lot. And I love the way that you just, again, framework, you break it down into these levels. And I think my biggest thing that I still don't know that AI can replace is the human accountability, or like, I don't respect my AI the same way that I respect the advice that my coach
Correct.
or a person. It's like, so you're saying, so like, I'll use kind of like going to the example that you share. It's like, I know that like for me, it's never been a lack of knowledge at this point, like access to knowledge. I think we can get books to the public library, even if I cannot afford to buy these books. The first 20, 30 books I've ever read, I went to the public library here in Orlando, Florida, right? Now we have Google and now we have AI. And if knowledge was enough for us to reach our goals, we will all be rich, fulfilled, and in shape. And we're not. Like, it's like very rarely do I see someone, and even the people who I thought were the most rich, fulfilled, and in shape, you probably inside are not fulfilled. They're fighting their demons, right? And I think a lot about that. Like, if the AI was giving me advice on where to eat, yes, it's smart. It knows that I should be eating this meal to hit my my protein goals if I want to do. But it's not the same as letting a human down, of saying, like, I committed to this personal trainer. I committed to this career coach. I did this. And maybe it's for me. Maybe I need that extra accountability. And I wish that I could because I wish I could get that level of accountability from AI, which to me is probably what's driving so much demand for in-person events in communities. Because the more we are actually having conversation with the AI, I actually feel like that there's something human about that we crave, that we want this level of community, that now we're wanting that out there. And so to me, it's like, yes, like I tell our clients, like, I think there's 3 pillars for you to reach your goal, right? I think for you to help reach complex goals, like getting a really difficult job, getting a promotion, right? I think there needs to be a level of the right strategy, the right frameworks, hopefully learning from someone who's been there, done that. 2, I think there needs to be a level of community, right? Where you're in a community with like-minded people who are also trying to reach that goal, and give you some level of peer accountability. And 3, there needs to be a level of accountability from somebody that you respect. And when you put those 3 elements together, I think you dramatically increase the chances of achieving that goal. And I think that one of those things by itself doesn't work. I think you do need a level of at least 2 of those 3, if not 3 out of those 3 things. What do you think about that theory?
No, it's a good. It's you see it in practice. I would just say go for all three because it's so easy to get all three, right? The only thing that's blocking you is your own mental ability to be able to go through it. And I agree with you. Like, even if my AI tells me what to eat and what not to eat, it won't know if I took a French fry from my wife and just said, "Hey, I'm just gonna put this. I'm just gonna eat one of your French fries here because I was like, I just want some." And of course, but my wife's like, "No, you already had two." And then she'll, funny enough, my accountability, like even if I have it, is my accountability. My call it my health fitness coach, also named Daniel. He follows my wife's Instagram, and they follow each other's Instagrams. And of course, if she takes a photo, he's like, "Hey, Davis, you didn't log that in. You looks like you had a milk tea there. Like, where was that on this?" I'm like, got caught. Like my AI wouldn't do that, right? And so the accountability stack is huge. It's and I would extrapolate it even bigger than just accountability, but it's just the idea that to me, it's like having a human being does three things. It is accountability, but it's two other factors too. It's one, someone with judgment who can ask you the right questions or consider your context because AI, as good as AI is, it's only as good as the context you give it. And if you don't give it enough good context, it's not going to know. For example, it's not going to know that, hey, at some point, like for example, my health nutrition coach here, he'll tell me, "Hey Davis, I know your wedding's coming up and your family will be in town just that week. It's okay to just you don't have to count the calories as strictly because just show your family around. They shouldn't be eating chicken, rice, broccoli all the time, right?" And so it has a human element to it. Is that it's the accountability I mentioned earlier, is the context, but also third is you also have someone to blame if anything goes wrong. Like, and I don't blame my coach, that's on me, but it's just more of imagine, for example, you're chatting with, and I'm pretty sure we've all had the situation where you go to a software subscription, whatever it is, and you go to a chat bot and you quickly realize the support bot is a bot versus a human being. If it's a human being, you feel like, okay, there's someone who can help me resolve some sort of problem versus this is a bot. I'm like, I can scream at it, it's just say, "Yeah, I'm just a bot. Refer to these FAQs."
Sorry, my wife started asking me a question, but we'll edit that out. But yeah, no, like I think that's the part that it's the most difficult part where I don't think AI do that. I think about this like as much as we want to say that humans are logical creatures, we make a lot of our decisions based on emotions. And I think that's the part that AI is not there, right? And we know that. Like we know that even if the AI tries to be empathetic and even if the AI tries to bring in emotions into a conversation, we know that it is not really emotion, like at least not right now. And I think that's why as much as I built a GPT of windy roads, because I would love to have like a windy roads like on the show Billions, I know that the advice the GPT Windy Roads gives me is not as powerful as if it was a real human performance therapist coach. And I think that's kind of like where I think, yeah, I think it's how I think about it. Like AI is it's just going to create more wants and needs and support from coaches, from coaches or people. Not say just coaches, but
It is, and it goes again to what I talked about and what we talked about with just being the sandwich, being the top and bottom versus being the meat in the middle. Is that there will be people who see this as I'll use my personal therapist. I love having him. I recommend if you're going to be a serious entrepreneur, like you need some sort of support. So I am a huge fan of having a therapist, really a fan of mine. And so I'll tell you two things, which is that I've tried doing the ChatGPT AI therapist as well when my therapist is we're not in session. I have a problem I want to be able to wrestle with on it. And quickly you can see the need of what we talked about earlier, which is some people will see it like, you know what, I can't afford all these therapy sessions. It's really costly. I can't afford a coach. Like it literally is not liquid enough. They're just going to go straight to the AI solution, which is good enough, right? For their stage. And then there are people who are like, no, I want the best. I want people with the judgment. And of course, they're going to go for the best. Who has the best brand? Who has the best reputation? They're going to go there. And of course, that's what creates the middle. Being in a middle and no man's land, referring back to it, it's just, that's not where you want to be. And so you're either going to end up being AI first, a platform, whatever it may be, or you're going to end up being a premium service that you become the go-to. And that's the same thing I see. It's that because it's like, why would I take a mediocre therapist versus just having GPT do it for me?
yeah. Davis, I know you're a big fan of in-person events. I've seen some of the speeches that you've done from, I think it was an entrepreneurship conference. And then even you host your own masterminds in Mexico earlier this year. Why do you like in-person events so much? Why do you think it's important? And when do you think an entrepreneur should consider going to like in-person events? When is it too early? When is it too late?
Good question. I'll tell you why I love events. Is I love events because there's something magical about being in a room with other people to spark ideas, to spark what you're thinking about, and to be able to have discussions with them. Because it only takes you one idea. Like we've been to same ones in Vegas. We've been to other ones as well, where it's just like there's something there where you overhear a conversation and it just changes how you thought about it. Even though it's not related to you, you just feel this spark and you feel this inspiration. And so I find that when I go to events, it's really three things. Is one is, does it lift my knowledge in terms of what's working, what's not working? Because you only have one experience, but you combine a room of other people and you've lived decades in the same year because of so many people in the room. So you can see what's working, what's not working versus just a sample size of one. Second is, does it fill my social batteries, like my energy and my soul? Because I think we've both been in rooms where people just give and give and give, and they don't try to up one each other. And we've also been in rooms where everyone's trying to up one each other, and it's just not fun, right? In the right room, people are just trying to lift, and they share vulnerabilities about what's happening, and you feel like you're part of a tribe. And the third is, it just refills your soul, so you don't feel like you're alone. For example, I was at an event, and some of the people were like, "Yeah, I feel like this part of my life is really hard right now." And they were talking about parenting, whatever it may be. And they can openly share it because other people just don't understand it. Like, as much as you can share it with your wife, you can share it with an employee or whatnot, a therapist, there's something different from being in a room full of your peers that they just understand and they get you. And if someone has solved the problem that you've already solved, easier, right? So that's why I just believe it, because I've just been in so many events that just a conversation with the right person just changed the trajectory of not just my business, but just my personal life, our connection. And then second, when should people go? Here's my theory about it. I'd love to hear yours too. Is I'll tell you the two types of people. There's the person who go to events and it's just, to them, it's kind of like, wow, I am growing, I'm learning, and then they do nothing.
Motivation.
Exactly. It's like rah motivation, and then you're back in the same place. For that one, I'm like, you're probably better off just working instead of just going to more events. Like just work. And then there's the opposite side, which are the people who would benefit from the events because they're so deep into their work that they don't know what they don't know. And it's just one conversation, one connection could change everything. And so I always love going to it. I've been in events where I am like the smartest person in the room, and I've been in events where I'm like the dumbest person in the room. Both benefits, but I always try to find it. So in that, I at least have one community that to me is like social. It's just like my people. Even if I don't get $1 billion idea from it, they're my people. Like, I just hang around with them. In fact, I'm in one of those communities, and at my wedding, there's a couple tables of people from that community flying in and all that. It's just that community. It's my social community. Then you have like the second one, which are people where you're ahead of them just by a little bit, because it feels like you're giving back, and you feel like, you know what? I'm not a piece of crap. I am not so small. Like, I'm giving back. I'm ahead. I'm like doing things. And then I like to be in rooms where there are people where they're way ahead of me. And I like to learn from them about what it is I can do better to just grow myself and just have a bigger vision of what's possible.
Yeah, I go through phases on how I feel about events. I think ultimately that they're an amazing way for you to realize to think bigger, right? I think for me, I went to the last kind of like investments that I made of going to like events. Well, I went to Aspire, which is like a big kind of like business conference, and they tour around. One was in Orlando, so it was really easy for me to just go to that one. So, but like one that I actually traveled to was like investing into the Alex Hermosi, like the VAM workshop.
The VAM Vegas, yep.
The Vegas. And for me, I thought that was a really good, it was $5,000 and it was like amazing value, right? And I think that the biggest learning lesson there is because everyone there usually does over $1 million a year. Like, I think it's a bare minimum. They continue to increase but it allows you to be like, wow, like, I don't know if this, I think about like this person, and no disrespect on the person, like this person has a 20, 30, $40 million business, and they're not smarter than I am, or they're not that much smarter than I am. Like, and it just allows you to just see what's possible. Right. And for me, I am the type of person that if I see that is possible, then I will go and execute that, and I can go do it myself. So I get a lot of benefit from that. I've also been at events, to your point, where I am the main speaker, and it's maybe people who are trying to accomplish a goal that I've already accomplished. And the goal of that event might be very different than the goal of me going to Alex Hermosi and trying to learn from him and other entrepreneurs in that room, right? I think for me, I found the cadence to run. Earlier in my entrepreneurship journey, I'm kind of going all over the place, but earlier in my entrepreneurship journey, I was one of those, like, I would try to go all the conference events. I could. I would get motivation. I would try to network. I would be the person that would like literally be like, I need to get 10 business cards. This is like maybe more than 10 years ago. I need to get 10 business cards and I need to network with everyone and I need to maximize every opportunity. And when I look back at those times, I feel like I didn't get as much as I should have from those events. But when I look at like, when I go to an event, I think about what am I going to like, what is my goal of that event? What needs to happen? Is it, I'm going there on a purposely to network and meet people? Am I going there because I'm going there and learn and get inspired to think about bigger? Am I going there because it's going to be a good credibility booster for me to create content because I'm a main speaker, right? But I do think regardless that live events are amazing. And for me, like that's something I want to do more. Like I did once 2 years ago in Orlando, a small kind of like mastermind of career coaches. We brought some of our clients and that was amazing. And I think for me, I want to do more of that because nothing replaces that in-person meeting. And you could do a whole day of Zooms, but like the conversations that you have throughout the day, the conversations that happen at dinner, the conversations that happen in the morning, like before the meeting start, as we're getting coffee and we're making coffee, those things I think are so hard to replace. And it is something that I think, I don't know, it's something in our DNA as humans that we crave this in-person connection.
No, exactly. Especially with AI, this is going to be more and more valuable as we go through. And that's why I just love it. It's about like we were talking about this on text. It's like this is my favorite part of it. It is a lot of work to put on together. So if you can ever be an attendee, just appreciate that because someone's doing all the work that you don't know about in the behind the scenes. It is, and especially just being a part around the right rooms.
Yeah. Davis, man, it's been over an hour of us talking and going back and forth. But one last question, kind of before we wrap it up, and I guess two questions because I want to make sure you tell us a little bit more about how people can get a hold of you and learn more about what you do. But where do you see the future of career coaching? If you had to predict where career coaching would be 2 to 3 years from now, where would that be?
So for career coaching, you already see the signs of it. So a lot of people right now, they think of they're still using I call it the 2021 framework, which is you're thinking about it as, hey, let me help you get a better career. Right now, some people just want career insurance. It's kind of like we have house insurance, we have fire insurance, we have car insurance, but who's your insurance for your career? That's what we do, right? Is that we're servicing a market. And you're seeing already trending this, and we talked about this a lot with the hamburger, right? Which is who's the top 10, who's at the top, and who's at the bottom. It's like, we need to figure out the direction. If you're stuck in the middle, it's coming through. And someone told me this today when I was working through one of my coaching sessions is that he's like, no one ever gets a divorce all of a sudden. It's really just gradual and it just happens, right? And it's the same thing with a market where I see this bifurcation of where people are headed. Are you heading towards the premium or are you going to head towards the low cost, but you're doing it very efficiently? Everything in the middle is just going to get squeezed out. But I do see the need for career coaches to be more prevalent, especially as AI goes through this transformation, that we are going to be able to figure out what jobs are being created, what jobs are going to be eliminated. But most importantly, what does it mean for each and every one of us individually? And as a coach ourselves, we need to be able to figure that out for ourselves. And so that's why I see the market going, is that we're going to be more valuable, but not everyone will be more valuable. We as a general group will be more valuable, but not everyone individually will be more valuable.
Have you ever heard of the I just watched a really great YouTube video about like how AI is not going to replace your job, but it's going to replace your task. And the YouTuber, I forget his name. I'll text it to you, but he talks about there's only one job in the United States that's ever been fully replaced. Like that the US Labor Census Bureau tracks that of what people's jobs are. And is the elevator. It was the elevator operator. It's the only job that's eliminated. Every other job has changed the way it's done, but it's never been eliminated. But then he goes on and talks about that example of pilots, that autopilot has been around for a long time. Like it's not a new technology, even though we think we have driverless cars now. Autopilot has been around. In fact, more than 90+% of what of the work of flying a plane from one city to a city, it's the autopilot. It's really not the pilot. Like the pilot is really just there as a worst case scenario situation to be the human judgment on what we do. How do we land? But the autopilot can land in pretty much every circumstances now. And a lot of people assume that when autopilot was invented, that it was just going to eliminate the needs for pilots. And what ultimately happened was that it didn't. It actually made flying cheaper, and it went from flying only was something that was accessible to rich people to now everyone can afford, not everyone, but most people can now afford, like everybody in the middle class can now afford flying. And so now you have a lot more demand for flights. You need more planes, which you need more pilots and so on. And it's interesting because he talks about like the same thing as like the gun that puts nails in, and people like carpenters and roofers used to spend a lot of time just nailing things in. And it would take a longer time to build a house or to build a roof or to build something. But now with the gun, you would think like, well, you don't need as many carpenters, you don't need as many roofers, but that's not the case. It just eliminated a task that allows the same person to do more thing. And it's the same thing with radiology. So there's the YouTuber essentially pretty much goes into examples that says, every time we think that technology is going to eliminate something, all it does, it actually amplifies the career. Like you can even say the same thing as graphic designers. I'm like, well, book cover example. And he goes example like 3 days of back and forth. But now we still might need a human to kind of oversee what's the difference. We know directionally that this is good, but we would probably want that expert to say like, this is the best book cover ever for you to sell more books. Right. And it essentially gives that example. And I think a lot about that as where the future of career coaching is going. And to me, it goes into the world that doesn't necessarily focuses on a resume or a LinkedIn profile. I think it goes into a world where it's career management. Right.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to think about it. It's almost what we talked about on the thread we haven't mentioned. It's like it's outcome based, which is you're basically moving up the stack, which is before a designer. Now you're just like, oh, you know what? I'm busy. I can only do a couple of designs. Now that's just table stakes. Your mentor is like, what's the best design for me? So everyone gets pushed up a rung here. And if people don't want to get pushed up a rung, that's the issue there. Is like, if I think about my friends who are working in engineering, for example, their jobs are morphing where all of a sudden they're managing agents now who are doing the work and they're doing the code review versus actually doing the coding. So there's a different shift. And you're right about that, which is the same thing we have to do as career coaches as well, is thinking about what is that? And I love that term, career management, as well. It's more like, how are you helping people through that process versus just, all right, I'm going to help you with a resume. Good luck.
Yeah. Like if I can give an example, like I think about how flying was only for the rich, right? I think about, I don't know a CEO who doesn't have a coach. Like, or a athlete who doesn't have a coach. Like if you go to the Olympics, every athlete has a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach. Tom Brady had a coach. Like they all have a coach, but they could afford it at that state, right? And there's somebody or they have an agent, right? And they have a coach, they have an agent. Even in fact, the people who are in the top 0.1% of their craft, they have a team that helps them manage their career. Like you think about like Tom Brady, he had an agent. He has a publicist, he has a stylist, he had a nutritionist, he had Alex Guerrero who stretched them every day. Like he had this whole team to maximize the performance for them. And that's a luxury right now that's only for the really, really rich, people who make $1 million a year or more, let's say, right? I think we get to a world where every every person has a agent per se, like a manager. And maybe we get to a point where the model of how we charge career coaches is not like pay me $5,000 and I get you a job. But what if they make 2-3% of your income and their job is to always make sure that you're maximizing your income and to say, hey, Davis, based on what we're seeing in the marketplace, I think you're being underpaid and you can go from making $200,000 at working at Google to going and taking some equity in this startup, which your experience matches really well. Maybe take a 175 salary, but because of the stock base, you could potentially go and make millions of dollars. And it's my job because I have more data, more pattern recognition, and I can prompt the AI to work with me better to be able to guide your career better for you. And I think to me, it becomes that it doesn't become a one-off relationship of let me help you get a job, but it becomes a long-term relationship. It becomes a network. It becomes a specialization of an industry or niche where a career coach is going to thrive and build long-term relationships with their clients. And maybe a career coach is someone that just manages 100 to 1,000 careers. And it becomes kind of like a doctor practice, but that is it. Those are your 1,000 people or 100 people or 300 people, whatever it's capable of doing it. And you take a percentage of everyone's salary and then you have a really healthy life. So I don't know, man. That's what I think.
Might as well call it. You can call it a branded career agent.
Yeah. Davis, tell us a little bit more, kind of like what you do, how people can find out more about you, how they can get a hold of you.
Thanks for having me on. So they can find me at just my LinkedIn, just search up Davis Nguyen, and then I'm easy to find. You can also email me, davis@joinpurplecircle.com. At Purple Circle, what we do is we help coaches increase their income, increase their impact, and also their time freedom. So our mission is to empower 1 billion lives. And in order to do that, we want to empower coaches to be able to do their best work and to live their best life as well. So that's what we do.
Awesome, man. Hey, everyone, if you're watching this, if you found even one piece of value that was helpful to you, this is a free podcast. So don't forget to like and subscribe. That is the way for us to grow. And if you found this helpful, send this episode to one person you think you can, that will find value in this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Bye, everyone.